All right, and welcome to this video series on work orders where we are going to be taking a look at your service overview. And specifically today, we're going to look at how to convert your scheduled services into work orders so that they can be planned, resourced, and scheduled accordingly. During today's session, we're going to be looking at the grouping of services and then specifically the process by which we group those services, which is filter, sort, select, and schedule. So let's get started. All right, here we are at the service overview. How we got here: maintenance, work orders, service overview. If you have not taken a look at the two videos prior to this regarding the service overview, there's one called Setup and Best Practices, and then Fields and Filters. I highly recommend you go look at those because we address some of the things that are kind of foundational to understanding what we're getting ready to do here. So when we have done the setup properly, and of course, a little recap, whenever we attach a service or we create the service and we attach it to a piece of equipment, like we have here, here's our services assigned to equipment, then it's this schedule date that is going to show up on our service overview. So based on the filters that we have up here, this is showing the list of services based on our filters. So here's everything that's due. Then this could be ideally once you get into a rhythm of scheduling your services. And like I've mentioned before, you shouldn't have to spend any more than 30 minutes to an hour a week scheduling your services or at least converting them to work orders. So you should be able to set up your filters, your default dates to looking a year back and maybe 30 to 60 days ahead. And then you should be able to come in here once a week and see the things that are showing up on your based on your filters and converting those next sets of PMs into work orders to be completed. So a couple things that we want to talk about is grouping. If you have like equipment or you have multiple services for one piece of equipment that all come due at the same time, we want to group those. Now, it doesn't always make sense to group. If you are trying to keep the number of labor hours to the number of hours that your maintenance technicians are able to work in a day, then you'll have to keep some of those work orders separate. But if you will allow a work order to stay open for multiple days, then you can have 12, 14 hours on it, and that doesn't bother you, then your grouping makes the most sense. So let's take a look at this grinder Baldor. Okay, notice that we have the annual, the 6-month, and the 3-month all came due within my filtered date range. And so between those three, I have 10 hours worth of work. Or I'm sorry, those are the interval. I have 9 hours worth of work. Now, I feel like I should go ahead and convert those and schedule them all to one work order. Now, I can do that one of two ways. I can simply select individually each one of those grinders. I can also come up here and select all this unit. Okay, so it would have selected all three of those anyway. And then I want to come up here and create the work order. So let's stop right here and make sure we look at our process. First thing we did is we filter, then we sort, then we select, and now we schedule. Okay, so filter, sort, select, schedule. Okay, and when I hit this create work orders button right here, this pulls up my scheduler. Okay, now here's what we're going to do. Under the schedule date, you want to pick a date in the future. Some people like to leave it blank, and what that will do is it will default to your earliest due date. That way you can have an idea of what your original scheduled date is. But in this case, where we're selecting multiple that are due on different dates, I'm going to go ahead and pick a date in the future. And this doesn't necessarily mean this is when I want the work order to be completed. And I'll explain what I mean by that here in just a second. So I'm just going to say I want this, I'm going to schedule this for next Friday, the 8th. Actually, we're nearing the end of the month. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule it for the end of the next month. Okay. And don't throw stones at me yet. You'll understand why. Under the category, I'm going to label this as planned. It's preventive maintenance, so it's going to fall under the planned. The grouping is preventive maintenance. And then here's the class. Now, the class code gives us the ability to categorize and classify the way, the current stage of our work orders. And so we can mark this as needs reviewed, which it just simply means I don't really know if we have the right parts, if we have the right man hours, if we have the equipment availability. So I'm going to mark it as needs reviewed. And then we'll get into what it looks like to assess and determine whether or not we need to order parts. If we reclassify this to waiting on parts, ready to schedule, none of that matters right now. All we're doing is moving our services to work orders. So I'm going to mark this as needs reviewed. Priority, it's not a requirement. I'm going to mark it as low. Requester, again, in this case, there's not a requester. The work group, you can leave that blank or pick it. Technician, if you know exactly who you want to work the work order, then you can select your technician here. Again, you're not resourcing this here. You're just simply moving this to a work order. Now, you want to pay attention to these two boxes down here. It says create separate work order on different service work group. Here's your service work groups over here. Now, in this case, they're all maintenance, but if they were different and I wanted them to all be on the same work order, then I would uncheck that box. And then the same thing with different service employee. And again, it's all the same employee, so I don't have to worry about that, but that's just something that you want to keep in mind. Now I'm going to go to proceed. Okay. Now, what it's done is it's taken those three services and combined them onto one work order. Okay. Now, real quick, and I'm going to create a separate video on planning and scheduling, but what we've done is we've marked this work order as needs reviewed, and the work order overview is going to now be the place where I look at and assess my resources that are available, the services that need to be done, the parts that need to be available, the equipment that needs to be available, and and once I have assessed and are ready to move and reclassify this work order, I can do that right here. So we won't get into that right now, but just know that that's the process. So let's do it again. We have our service overview, and I'm going to select this next grinder, Baldor, and I'm going to select all like units. There we go, selected 2. And this is an annual and a 6-month, so I'm just going to create the work order. And again, I'm going to schedule this for the end of next month. Make it a weekday. Preventive maintenance, planned, preventive, classification, needs reviewed, no question, every single time. From the service overview, you're always going to select needs reviewed. Priority, requester, not necessary, work group. And by the way, if your codes don't look like this, then you just need to get administrative access to change them. And if you've been using Express Maintenance for a while and you have used codes a certain way, then you should probably give us a call and talk to us about the best ways to transition to using our best practices. And then technician, we'll go ahead and pick my name. Now in this one, want to double check work group and employee. Okay, doesn't matter. I want them to both show up on the same one. Do I want to view the work order? No. Go back to the work order overview, and there it is. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to show you guys how this should look in real time. So if I come in to the office, and let's say it's Monday, and Mondays are the days where I sit down and I look at my service overview. I already know that all of last week's services were already converted to work orders. I can come up here and just select all items. Okay, now it's only going to combine services on like equipment. So if I select all of them and then just come up here and create work order, these are all planned, they're all preventive, and they're all going to get marked as needs reviewed. The priority, it's preventive maintenance, so it's pretty low. Requester, no common requester. Work group, they may have a common work group, but we don't have to select that one now. And then the technician, again, I'm not going to even pick that one. If there's a technician already assigned, that will carry over into the work order, but it's not required. And now we're going to hit proceed. and it's going to start creating work orders for me. Watch these numbers tick up. Finish process. Just created 20 work orders for me. Okay, I'm going to cancel that and go back to my service overview and look. All of this week's services have been scheduled into next month. Now, go to my work order overview, and I am going to filter my dates to show you what this looks like, because we picked the 29th of May, and that doesn't really matter. And you'll notice that because I left the schedule date blank, it kept all of the scheduled dates. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I want to just show you that when we go to our classification, I can go to needs reviewed, hit search, and these are all of the services that are not currently ready to be, or the work orders that are currently not ready to be completed. And if I'm a technician, then I'm coming in, looking up Eric Waymeyer, and I'm going to go to my class, what's scheduled, because look, if it's scheduled, if it's followed this pattern, then we know that the parts are available if it needs parts. We know that it's ready to schedule. If it needed to be scheduled with production, that's already happened as well. So we just hit ready to schedule, and currently I don't have any that are ready to schedule for me based on these dates. So if I go to needs reviewed and delete that, then as the planner or scheduler, I'm going to work down these work orders and see if there's any parts that are needed, see what labor time is required, who it's required for. I can go to the technician and look, I'm getting into the planning and scheduling piece. But just so you guys know that if I go to the technician, I can see, okay, this is how much work, how many PMs need to be done. There's 34 hours. I'm not going to get all of this in this week, so I can move some of these to next week and reschedule some for the week after that, so on and so forth. So that is why when we are in the service overview, we highlight them all, and then we just move them over into the work order overview, classified as needs reviewed, and then it's from the work order overview that we'll get into the planning and scheduling. So I hope that helps you, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks.